When most people picture ancient Rome, they think of emperors, gladiators, and massive stone temples. But ordinary Romans lived in a very different world. They carried strange charms for protection, buried curses against their enemies, grabbed hot meals from street counters, and covered their cities with messages that still survive today. Some of their everyday habits seem almost unbelievable now, but to them, it was just another day in Rome. Imagine walking through ancient Rome and seeing a small bronze charm shaped like a winged phallus hanging above a doorway. To the Romans, there was nothing unusual about it. In fact, archaeologists have uncovered similar objects across the Roman world. Some of the best preserved examples come from Pompeii, where they still appear on homes, carved into stone, painted on walls, worked into mosaics, and even hanging from bronze wind chimes known as tintinnabula. Others have been found hundreds of miles away, showing that this wasn't the custom of a single city, but a belief shared across much of the empire. So why would anyone place something like this above a doorway? The answer begins with something the Romans feared far more than the object itself. They believed that envy could become dangerous. A jealous rival, an admiring stranger, even a lingering glance from someone who wished you harm could carry an unseen force capable of bringing illness, bad luck, or misfortune. Today, that belief is known as the evil eye, but to many Romans it wasn't a superstition whispered about in secret. It was simply another risk of everyday life. The small charm was known as the fascinum, and its purpose was to drive those unseen dangers away before they could reach the people, homes, or businesses it was meant to guard. At first glance, that explanation only raises another question. Why this symbol? Historians don't have a single answer. Ancient Romans never explained why this particular image became associated with protection, leaving modern scholars to debate exactly how that symbolism developed. What the evidence does show is that the fascinum functioned as an apotropaic symbol, an object intended to turn away harmful supernatural forces rather than invite them. Archaeology tells only part of the story. Fortunately, the Romans left written evidence as well. Writing in the 1st century CE, Pliny the Elder described the fascinum as protection against the evil eye. Other Roman writers mention children wearing these charms, suggesting they were considered especially vulnerable to unseen dangers. The belief reached far beyond private households. According to Pliny, a sacred fascinum connected with the safety of Rome itself was placed under the care of the Vestal Virgins, showing that the symbol was woven not only into everyday life, but into Roman religion as well. By now, the little charm looks rather different. It wasn't something hidden away or carried only by a handful of believers. A Roman could encounter these symbols almost anywhere, hanging above a shop, guarding the entrance to a home, swinging from a bronze wind chime, or worn as a personal amulet. What seems unusual today was once an ordinary part of the landscape, quietly watching over daily life in ways most people never questioned. Nearly 2,000 years later, it's easy to smile at the image. The Romans almost certainly wouldn't have. They weren't looking at something humorous. They were looking at something they trusted to keep unseen dangers away. And if they believed unseen forces could shield a person from harm, they also believed those same forces could be turned against an enemy. Imagine leaving a Roman bathhouse only to discover your cloak has disappeared. You ask the people nearby. No one saw anything. The thief is gone. Instead of searching the streets or taking the matter before a magistrate, many Romans chose a very different response. They wrote a curse. Archaeologists have uncovered thousands of these thin lead tablets across the former Roman Empire. But some of the most remarkable discoveries came from the ancient city of Aquae Sulis, now Bath in England. Hidden for nearly 2,000 years beneath the sacred spring of a temple, around 130 tablets survived where people had thrown them into the water, believing their words would reach the gods. Many weren't written by priests or rulers. They came from ordinary people, people who had been robbed, cheated, betrayed. Their messages are surprisingly personal. One person asked for help recovering a stolen pair of gloves. Another wanted a thief punished until stolen property was returned. Again and again, the complaints mention everyday possessions, cloaks, tunics, coins, jewelry, the kinds of things that mattered in daily Roman life. The ritual itself seems to have been just as important as the words. Messages were scratched into thin sheets of lead, folded or rolled closed, then placed into sacred springs, wells, temples, or graves, places believed to carry the writer's request to the gods. Not every tablet was carefully written. Some were neatly inscribed, suggesting the work of experienced scribes. Others were rough, filled with mistakes, or barely legible at all, hinting that the writers scratched the words themselves. Even without perfect writing, they still believed the gods would understand what they meant. They're often called cursed tablets. Yet many historians describe at least some of them as prayers for justice. Rather than taking revenge themselves, the writers placed their hopes in the hands of the gods, asking them to reveal the guilty, recover what had been taken, or punish whoever was responsible. Whether those prayers were ever answered is something archaeology can never tell us. The thief disappeared long ago. The person who wrote the tablet did too. The message didn't. Long after everyone involved had been forgotten, their dispute survived. That's what makes Roman curse tablets so remarkable. They're not just strange artifacts. They're some of the most personal voices ever recovered from the ancient world. Life in ancient Rome didn't stop with prayers and curses. Eventually, everyone got hungry. Long before modern restaurants, Romans were already grabbing hot meals from the street. At first, that sounds surprisingly familiar. The reason wasn't. Many Romans, especially those living in apartment buildings known as insulae, had little or no proper kitchen. Preparing food indoors could be inconvenient, expensive, or even dangerous in the crowded neighborhoods of a Roman city, making ready-made meals the practical choice for countless households. So where did they go? The answer still survives in stone. Across the Roman world, cookshops like these have been preserved, with some of the best examples found at Pompeii, Herculaneum, and Ostia. Their broad counters opened directly onto the street, inviting customers to stop without ever stepping far inside, while large clay jars, known as dolia, were built into the surface to hold food and drink ready throughout the day. Only then does the Roman name become important. These places were known as thermopolia. They weren't grand dining halls or places to linger for hours. They existed for a much simpler reason. A hot meal had to be available somewhere. The buildings reveal far more than their architecture. Food remains preserved inside the jars have identified duck, pig, fish, and even land snails, while one recently excavated thermopolium preserved crushed fava beans, an ingredient believed to have been used in the preparation of wine. Some were decorated with colorful frescoes that may have shown the food sold inside, helping customers see what was available before placing an order. It's not difficult to imagine who stopped here. Workers pause on their way through the city. Craftsmen step outside for a quick meal before returning to their workshops. Travelers stop in unfamiliar neighborhoods. Dock workers arriving at Ostia find something hot to eat before continuing their day. The Thermopolia stop being archaeological sites. They become part of the rhythm of Roman life. These cookshops reveal something much bigger than an ancient menu. They reveal a city that rarely stood still. Much of everyday life unfolded out in public, where people worked, traded, argued, shopped, and ate from morning until night. And eventually, they all needed somewhere to go. Roman public toilets were far more social than most people would ever be comfortable with. Imagine walking into a long stone room where rows of seats stood side by side, separated by nothing at all. No doors, no partitions, no privacy. For many Romans, there was nothing unusual about it. Public latrines stood beside bathhouses, markets, forums, and theaters, making them as familiar as any other public building. Stopping there could simply become another part of a busy day, rather than an experience hidden away from everyone else. That raises an obvious question. Why build them like this? The explanation lies not in Roman engineering, but in Roman culture. The expectation of privacy many people have today simply wasn't understood in quite the same way. While modern researchers remain cautious about just how social these places really were, the open design itself suggests that sitting beside strangers was considered completely normal rather than something to avoid. The engineering, however, was anything but ordinary. Beneath the stone seats, running water carried waste into the sewer system, while a second shallow channel flowing in front supplied cleaner water that could be used during the visit. In some places, the system was even connected to nearby bathhouses, allowing water to continue serving the public before finally entering the sewers. One object has become almost as famous as the toilets themselves, the xylospongium, a sponge attached to the end of a stick. For generations, it has often been described as a communal cleaning tool shared by everyone using the latrine. Modern researchers are less certain. Ancient sources mention the object, but exactly how it was used remains debated, with some scholars suggesting it may have served a different purpose altogether. Like many aspects of Roman daily life, the evidence leaves room for more than one interpretation. Not everyone depended on public latrines. Some wealthy Romans had private toilets within their homes. Workers, travelers, shoppers, and visitors often relied on shared facilities instead, making them an essential feature of Roman towns across the empire. The engineering behind these buildings was remarkable, but it isn't what makes them feel so unfamiliar today. The greatest difference lies somewhere else. For many Romans, sharing a room like this with complete strangers appears to have been an ordinary part of public life, rather than something to avoid. What feels uncomfortable to many of us today may have seemed perfectly unremarkable to the people who used these places every day. Perhaps that's the biggest lesson these ruins leave behind. Sometimes the hardest part of understanding the ancient world isn't the technology. It's realizing that people didn't always see everyday life the way we do. And once you stepped back outside, the city kept talking, not with voices alone, but with words covering its walls. The walls of Pompeii preserve jokes, insults, love notes, advertisements, and election slogans that sound surprisingly familiar today. At first glance, they look like random scratches left behind by ordinary people. They aren't. They are the voices of an entire city. Graffiti covered homes, shops, taverns, bathhouses, and public buildings across the Roman world. Pompeii simply preserved more of it than almost anywhere else, freezing thousands of everyday inscriptions beneath the ash of 79 CE that would otherwise have disappeared long ago. So who was writing all of this? Almost everyone. Merchants promoted their businesses. Supporters encouraged neighbors to vote for their favorite candidates. Travelers announced they had been there. Gladiator fans praised their heroes. Lovers declared their feelings. Others simply left jokes or insults for anyone passing by to read. Some were scratched quickly into fresh plaster, while others were carefully painted, especially election notices commissioned to be seen across the city. The walls weren't simply being marked, they were being used. In a Roman city, almost everyone passed the same streets every day. Long before newspapers, printed posters, or digital screens, a wall offered something remarkably valuable, a place where messages could be seen by anyone walking past. Some advertised goods or services, others carried political messages, while many simply captured whatever someone wanted to say before moving on. That's what makes these inscriptions so different from monuments or official records. Most were never meant to survive. They were written for the people of that moment, expected to fade beneath fresh plaster, weather, or the next message scratched across the same surface. Instead, many of them remained exactly where they were left. Some still sound remarkably familiar. One person proudly declared, "Successus loves Iris." Another quickly replied that Iris cared nothing for him. Soon a third message joined the argument. Nearly 2,000 years later, the conversation is still unfinished. That's what makes Roman graffiti so remarkable. These weren't isolated scribbles forgotten on abandoned buildings. Others answered them, argued with them, and added their own opinions until the walls themselves became an ongoing conversation. Pompeii didn't create those conversations, it froze them in time. In most Roman towns, buildings were repaired, surfaces repainted, and older inscriptions slowly disappeared beneath new ones. The eruption of Vesuvius interrupted that ordinary cycle, preserving a single moment of everyday life that no one ever expected would survive. Official histories remembered Rome's rulers. Graffiti remembered its people. Leave the streets behind, step through the doorway of a Roman home, and another daily tradition was waiting inside. Many Roman households contained a small shrine, where daily offerings were made to the spirits and gods believed to protect the family. Unlike the temples that dominated public life, these shrines stood inside ordinary homes, quietly watching over the people who lived there. Archaeologists know them as Lararia, and some of the best preserved examples come from Pompeii, where painted walls, small altars, and traces of repeated use still survive. So who was being honored here? Most Lararia were dedicated to the Lares, protective spirits of the household. Many also included the Penates, associated with food and prosperity, while others displayed the family's genius, the protective spirit linked to the head of the household. Together they formed a small sacred space woven into the routines of everyday life. The rituals themselves were remarkably simple. A little wine, flowers, incense, or small portions of food could be offered at the shrine, not as part of a grand public ceremony, but as quiet acts repeated day after day within the home. Births, marriages, departures, and homecomings could all be marked here, making the shrine a silent witness to generations of family life. The shrines themselves reflected the homes around them. Large houses sometimes contained beautifully painted Lararia, decorated with columns, altars, and colorful images, while smaller homes often had little more than a simple niche built into the wall. The wealth of the household changed the appearance of the shrine, but not the belief behind it. One detail appears again and again: painted snakes. To many people today, they might seem out of place, yet to the Romans they symbolized prosperity, protection, and the well-being of the household rather than danger, appearing on Lararia throughout the Roman world. These small shrines reveal something temples alone never could. Roman religion wasn't confined to public ceremonies or great monuments. It was woven into everyday life, greeting people when they returned home, standing nearby while families shared meals, and remaining present through celebrations, departures, and countless ordinary mornings that were never recorded by history. Outside, Rome was filled with the noise of markets, conversations, and crowded streets. Inside, someone quietly poured a little wine before a household shrine and began another ordinary day. Every family hoped those protective spirits would remain with them for as long as possible, but no household could escape one certainty: death. And even then, Romans found a way to make sure they wouldn't be forgotten. Many ordinary Romans paid regular dues, so they could be certain they would receive a proper burial after they died. At first, that seems like an unusual thing to spend money on. But for many people across the Roman world, a proper funeral was far more than a ceremony. It fulfilled the final duties owed to the dead, offered comfort to the living, and helped ensure that a person's memory remained part of the community they had left behind. To make that possible, many Romans joined burial associations known as collegia funeratitia. Members paid an entrance fee followed by regular contributions, creating a shared fund that could help cover funeral expenses and ensure the rites expected by Roman tradition would still be carried out when they were needed. At first glance, these associations appear to revolve entirely around funerals. They didn't. Members met throughout the year, shared meals, celebrated religious festivals, and gathered for communal occasions long before anyone required their support. The final farewell eventually brought them together one last time, but life had brought them together first. One of the clearest pieces of evidence comes from the Italian town of Lanuvium, where an inscription dating to 136 CE records the rules of one such association in remarkable detail, listing entrance fees, monthly dues, funeral payments, and the responsibilities expected of both the members and the organization itself. For once, archaeology doesn't leave us guessing. We can read the rules ourselves. The people who joined these associations came from many walks of life, including freedmen, craftsmen, laborers, and other ordinary townspeople who wanted the reassurance that the proper ceremonies would be carried out. Fellow members would gather, and the farewell expected by Roman society would not depend entirely on the wealth of their surviving family. In the end, they weren't simply paying for a funeral. They were paying for certainty that after they were gone, the final duties would still be fulfilled, and their place within the community would not simply disappear. Every Roman eventually left behind their home, their neighborhood, and the routines of everyday life, but many hoped one thing would remain: their name. Ancient Rome wasn't built only by emperors, generals, or famous politicians. It was built by ordinary people who protected their homes, argued with their neighbors, grabbed lunch on busy streets, left messages on walls, gathered with their families, and hoped they would one day be remembered. These objects may seem ordinary. Together, they tell the story of the people who made Rome what it was. If one of these stories changed the way you see ancient Rome, let it travel. Like the video. Subscribe if you haven't. The objects survived. The people behind them almost disappeared. Their stories continue here on Riddle Me This Mysteries.